Hello, I am Mariah Jansen, a fourth year animal science student, and I'm going to be discussing shoujo manga and how it can be used as a way to educate youth on gender and sexuality. To start off my presentation, I'm going to give a little background information on shoujo manga. As of now, there is no clear English translation for the term shoujo, but it is said to signify that the genre of manga is mainly intended for young women, specifically unmarried women that range from preteens to young adults. Shoujo manga sets itself apart from other genres of manga because of its exploration of intimate and romantic experiences. Shoujo manga made its first appearance in Japan in 1953 with a story called Princess Knight. The story is set in a medieval fairy tale setting and is a story of a young princess named Sapphire. In the beginning of the story, Princess Sapphire is given both a blue and red heart before she is sent to Earth from heaven. The blue heart signifying a brave and adventurous boy, and the red heart signifying a loving and caring girl. Realizing that a mistake has been made, God sends a cherub to correct the mistake by retrieving the blue heart. Knowing that only a prince can inherit the throne of the kingdom Sapphire was born in, her parents, the king and queen, keep the fact that Sapphire has two hearts a secret in order for her to remain next in line. This is not an easy task due to the evil Duke Duralumin, who would be next in line if Sapphire's secret was to be revealed. Throughout the story, Princess Sapphire is faced with many difficult obstacles that in turn reveal her secret, and she gets banned from her kingdom. Sapphire takes the identity of Princess Knight in order to fight to save her mother, the prince she fell in love with, and her red heart from Madame Hell, who was trying to retrieve her red heart to make her tomboyish daughter more feminine. While all of this is happening, Sapphire meets a pirate and falls in love with him. Although this story was created in the 1950s, and only slightly plays a spin on gender identity and sexuality, it does provoke some questions and interest. This newfound interest helped further develop the highly important, eye-opening manga genre of shoujo. As shoujo developed and progressed, two subgenres became increasingly popular. These subgenres were yaoi and yuri. Yaoi being defined as a story with relations between homosexual men, and yuri being a story with relations between homosexual females. Japanese shoujo begins to address gender identity and homosexuality in society during the 1980s. During this increased burst of interest of yuri and yaoi, a few concepts became very popular. For example, in the subgenre of yaoi, the term bishinen, meaning beautiful men, became increasingly popular. It is believed that bishinen became popular because it's introduced the concept of gender ambiguity and gender exploration for young readers. Yuri also becoming popular for its targeted audience because authors would create physically and mentally strong female protagonists that defy gender roles. Yuri also began to empower young women to explore their gender identities and sexualities. Transitioning from the history and background of shoujo manga to its audience and how it pertains to sexual education, I will next be discussing how shoujo manga connects to its targeted audience, young women. A study was conducted at a high school in Japan that the results showed that a majority of female students reported that they read shoujo manga. Shoujo manga has been carefully crafted over the years to lure in its targeted audience. The authors of this genre use certain writing and drawing techniques to accomplish this. Shoujo stories include an abundance of hearts, large eyes that look almost doll-like, glittery backgrounds, and other very feminine art techniques. Additionally, shoujo manga uses the doki doki effect or moe moe, which highlights intimacy and emotion, which in turn associates the genre with the unconscious world of dreams, which is the opposite of shinen manga, which highlights bravery, action, and determination, which I will talk about further in the next slide. Although shoujo manga's targeted audience is young women, It is often banned by school districts due to its controversial topics and nudity. Most school library manga sections have been restricted and limited to stories about superheroes, which are the most likely the shinen manga that I talked about previously. Not only do educators think that shoujo manga is too inappropriate for school libraries, they believe that manga is impractical and the students should focus on more text instead of images. This couldn't be farther from the truth. Shoujo manga provides more than a source of entertainment in today's youth. Knowing that educators and administration in the majority of Western education districts feel that gender and sexuality education is inappropriate and controversial, in living through Western education, I am able to say that I did not learn anything about gender identity, nor did I learn anything about sexuality. To be completely honest, during this class period, that was the farthest thing from my mind. Gender, sexuality, and education is a tricky topic to educate on, mainly due to its controversy, but also due to its complexity. Understanding and in turn educating others on the emotions and experiences of LGBT individuals can be extremely difficult. Educators and administration have slacked in the past, but have been recently started making efforts to provide their students with a better understanding of sexuality and gender. But one limiting factor they have made for themselves is limiting the resources they allow for this type of education. School districts have banned probably one of the most engaging and educational sources of gender and sexuality education. That source being shoujo manga. These school districts refuse to look past the nudity and eroticism and look at what this genre is able to do for their students. Manga allows for students to escape the overwhelming, bland, and depressing nature of long texts and textbooks and enter a world of new ways to understand gender and sexuality. And this little image is a little screenshot of a grad student's thesis project about how teaching sex education with manga can be rewarding. And I thought it was pretty cool. It says education should be about expanding the mind. Every student, young or old, has the opportunity to learn in new ways. And I will expand on this in the next few slides. If educators start to incorporate manga into their curriculum, they will begin to see improvements in their students' critical thinking skills. When reading manga, the reader has to look not only at specific details, but entire pages to truly understand the progress of the story. Shoujo manga imagery is very complex and requires the reader to dive in deep and really pay attention to the details. The slightest details are what really tell the story. This is necessary for manga because the genre uses illustration more than it uses text. Due to there being minimal text, students are required to analyze the body language and facial expressions of the characters to grasp emotion being expressed by the characters. And the one on the right, the picture on the right shows a bunch of different facial expressions and like postures of characters. And I thought that was pretty interesting, so I thought I'd put it in there. It was honestly very helpful when I was looking through different stories. These stories will also strengthen not only a student's general critical thinking skills, but also help build their understanding of nonverbal communication. In most shoujo stories, gender and identity is linked to appearance and image, such as clothing, gestures, and hairstyles. It is also important to know that manga likes to define gender norms and paints a very fine line between its feminine and masculine characters. It's often hard to decipher if a character is male or female. And in the picture on the left, it's from a story about a character that plays a boy and a girl. So it shows the character as both, and you can tell that it's very hard to decipher the difference between the two, other than like the clothing and like how the hairstyle is and the facial features. Being the clothing and the hairstyle is also very, very similar and sometimes hard to tell the difference between. Due to the gender ambiguity of these characters, a multitude of students are able to relate to these stories. Depending on the gender identity of the student, the stories can come across as homoerotic or hetero. Not only does the gender ambiguity allow male and female students to relate, it also allows for gender nonconforming students to relate. Shoujo manga can do so much for students educationally, but most importantly, shoujo helps students build a deeper understanding and connection with themselves. Shoujo manga allows students to skip the heartache of the sad and depressing stories about gender identity and sexuality in textbooks and dive into a relatable and entertaining source of gender and sexuality information. The students reading the manga are able to be taken on a journey that can be similar to their own gender and sexuality experiences. Manga can help students find a sense of community from these characters and learn more about themselves through analyzing the characters. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.